Hey guys, welcome to another long-awaited episode of Ask the Misfits. We asked you guys for some questions online through Instagram, Facebook, other social media outlets, and we found 5 or 6 good topics that you guys asked about that we want to hit on today. So we're going to do that. What do you got?
All right, so we'll start with Anna Broadhead CF. Are y'all going to WaterPalooza? Will we be there?
Well, yes. I think we posted quite a bit on a lot of our channels that we've somewhat partnered with WaterPalooza this year, in the sense that we've contributed to some of their programming in both the online qualifier and the actual event itself. And we are definitely sending a whole team, the 4 of us sitting here who you can't see behind the camera, Ted, along with others, and we'll have a booth there actually. And not only will we sell new Sharpen the Axe gear at the booth and some Misfit gear at the booth, but we'll be there all weekend to hang out with you guys as well.
Meet the athletes, photos.
And I think that's the bigger part of what we're trying to do with our role there, is just become, not that we're not accessible to a lot of you guys anyway, we try to be as accessible as possible, but this is a really good chance for everyone to kind of meet in one really fun central location and shoot the shit.
If you're looking for a really fun time, that's the place to be.
I think that's our big goal for that event.
For sure.
So we're going to make sure that the whole clan's there as much as we can, and try to hang out with everybody throughout the weekend. So it's going to be fun.
Second question from Manu Pineda. CF, you guys have any idea what the future of the Masters athlete, track is while the change is happening in the sport?
I mean,
what do you guys foresee?
The changes aren't really compared to individuals, compared to teams. The changes aren't really that great. They're supposedly, from what we know right now, cutting age division modifiers in half with their qualifying spots.
Sounds like it.
Which I think probably, 10 to 20% of that division will probably tap out of each division. Will tap out.
Like they won't compete, or you think they won't train?
They won't train as hard, thinking that I can't make it from 14th to 9th or whatever.
Right.
And then there are people, I think, that'll probably double down. And I mean, it's a lot bigger deal, I think, to make it now with that going down. But it's the same qualifying process. It's the same time frames until the 2020 season rolls around. So in terms of like ambiguity of season, the Masters is probably the most similar to what they were dealing with last year.
Yeah, I mean, as far as we know, everyone still comes out of the Open, so that's not different. It would be nice, I think, if in order to grow, if they're interested in, and I say they, CrossFit is interested in growing the Masters field at the games level, I think they'll have to work with these sanctioned events to standardize what the Masters category is, because some just call it 50 plus, or some call it 60 plus, or whatever. And if they want to have all those divisions at the games still, which I believe they do, but they're only taking a few out of the Open, it would be better, I think, for the Masters season and to keep the Masters growing if they had sanctioned, standardized Masters events at these huge events, because they're already going to have Masters there anyway. So let them qualify out of there. If there's 16 events, let the top podium spot from each of those events be the qualifier, and the Open is just seeding. Like,
helps you get a better spot.
Or something like that. Like, because I know that's how they qualified in the past, but I just find that kind of lame based on how most of the other people will qualify these days. Like,
it seems like maybe they're prioritizing certain things to get that side of it figured out before they pass it along to age groups.
That's probably exactly what they're doing, but I would like to see it sooner than later, I think, for the sport's sake. But I think there's no changes yet, other than less people competing, I guess. But
you could see, I think, down the road too, specific maybe not as big of an event, but you could have like a Masters event somewhere. They could just say this is going to be the Masters throwdown prior to, and maybe that's a way to get those guys involved in an in-person thing versus just all these online qualifiers.
I don't know if they do that though, because then that puts the burden on the master to get to wherever they decide that to be, as opposed to when they have 16 sanctioned events that are literally all over the world now. It's still difficult to travel.
Like a wild card almost. Like maybe you didn't qualify through the Open and you wanted a chance or something like that. You could say, all right, here's your opportunity, your last chance to get to the CrossFit Games if you're a Masters.
They could do something like
one of these.
Yeah, I'd like to see it expanded no matter how they do it. I think the out of the Open, even with the additional qualifier, is
And I feel like sometimes it's beating a dead horse, but the concept of if it had changed more, what does that change about your training? And it's probably, once the panic subsides, not quite as aggressive as you think.
Yeah.
You have to attack your weaknesses. You have to be well-rounded. Like, it's one of those things where I think certain people will find it as an excuse to say, I'm done. And other people will find it as an excuse to, spin in the complete opposite direction and say, all right, keep training.
Which is no different than the individuals you're dealing with right now.
Not at all.
Yeah. So, yeah.
All right. Moving on from @MikeBob. Will the structure of the blog be changing from the 4 cycles and 2 post-open cycles in response to the new year and the reality of our sport?
Yes, we haven't given any details on this yet, even though we have most of our stuff ironed out on the back end. We need to figure out dates, and the one thing that we are waiting for is for CrossFit to announce when the Open is actually going to take place, the first Open of 2019. I've requested that those dates be released to me early so I can start planning. I was shot down no matter how much I begged for the dates. So we have a few tracks planned out depending on when you're going to compete, when your competition or your new regionals is, whether you decide to do WaterPalooza earlier in the year or you're going to try to qualify through Granite Games or one of the other 14 in between, whatever it is. We'll have a system in place where you will essentially train all year long with a blog style training, sort of like leading into the Open, where we're going to kind of build you up through the year, but there'll be tracks that you can go off those cycles and train specifically for your event that's coming up. It's going to take a little bit of extra logistical work on our end, but we do have a plan in place for it. And once we have our dates for the Open, we will be able to essentially announce when everything will be going live and what the cycles will look like, and more specifically what the competition track will look like once that happens. We're just waiting, and we assume we'll hear within the next month or so those details. So
it'd be nice for those people too decided that if certain parts of the year are better for competing versus others, like just with life stuff or work stuff going on, maybe they can get something and have the opportunity to train different time of the year or ramp up, because in the past we'd all had ramped up for the Open, and now you can get to ramp up whenever you want, essentially.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was no off season in the old style of training because of how important the entire year was to build and train for that. But now you can actually take some meaningful time off through the year and plan out your competition season more customized to what you want to do. I think it's better. I think it'll beat athletes up less. I think having the options of when you want to compete, as opposed to everyone has to train to be peaked for these same specific weeks or weekends. I think it will be better in the long run, and we have a lot of stuff planned for that. So we're just waiting for that official HQ announcement of all these changes that really has not taken place yet. We need the rule book, we need all that stuff before we can put anything in stone for you guys. But yes, changes are coming.
This is sort of piggybacking on this is from Mike. This is from now Facebook versus Instagram. Can you guys go into why you used to offer team training pieces and whether or not that will be coming back? Because Mike really liked it, grabbing buddies and throwing down with it. So,
yeah,
your thoughts are on that?
It's definitely going to come back in a sense similar to how it used to be out there. We'll have a couple days a week that we'll have team workouts out there, and we'll probably write a specific team track for the 4-person teams that are trying to compete at these big competitions, similar to how individuals will have to kind of ramp up for the major 16 events. The teams will also have to work together and ramp up. And I get that a lot of these teams are not going to be in the same location, these super teams, but it doesn't mean that it wouldn't be valuable for, let's say if Travis is a part of a super team that's stationed in different parts of the world, him to grab somebody who he trains with locally and practice some synchro movements or practice some you go I go work or some extra team skill stuff, like that's going to be valuable. So we're going to put it out there probably in it might be a semi-regular state where it's like a weekend thing where you can have additional like optional training piece on the weekends, or we might, or probably in addition to, build a whole track of team stuff to train for these events. So there will be a form of team training coming back. Details on that will be released soon as well.
All right. Now this kind of goes into the article I think Drew just wrote about finding your blind spots, but Renee Valencia Arellano just asked, how can you break through a mental block? I can snatch my 1RM for 3 reps, but with just 2.5 pounds on each side of the bar, I freeze. I know that strength is built into the prior cycle, cycle 1, and that helped correct some of my issues. I just didn't know if there are any other ideas I could work on or things I can focus on to kind of break through. I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's if you flip it upside down and say that it's good that there's consistency within the realm of 90 to 100%, that's really important in our sport. It can be even more important than, you know, having that 1 rep max there. So it's good that there's that repeatability there. And I think that one of the biggest things you can do is identify a motivating factor to hit 5 pounds more, 10 pounds more. Training partners, local competition, Olympic lifting meet, you know, something like that. There's something to that, like, extra nervous system piece that, like, we used to get in the football locker room, or, you know, you get on that Friday night when you can turn, you know, Rick Ross onto, you know, 700 out of 10 on the speakers. And, you know, there's ways to manipulate that and get your nervous system to crank up that extra level that it takes. And, you know, motivating factors are different for different people, right? I mean, some people like to have fun. That's easier for them. Some people like to, like, be like, fuck you, I want to lift more weight than you. Like, there's different ways to go about that. But for a lot of athletes, they need a reason. Like I've got probably 2 or 3 remote coaching athletes that can live all around that 95%, but the PR is just not going to come until it's WaterPalooza, right, or the Open, or some of these other places. And that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I think it's the mindset there is what needs to change in terms of, like you said, you're happy that you're consistent, but it's one of those things where, like, you know, PRs come and go, especially as a sign as, you know, as you train more and more. If you're PRing all the time, you're still a novice or an intermediate, like, it's a sign that you're doing something probably pretty well. Now, little things like technique can probably be fixed, but for the most part, you should be happy that you're that consistent. That's how I would look at it, even though it is fun to PR.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both you guys that consistency at that higher percentage is more important than the 1 rep max. Like, the tip I would say that I've seen work, at least in our gym, in front of my own eyes, is, like, I think you kind of hit on it, was creating the environment that, like, really gets you pumped up. You really shouldn't be by yourself, like, alone, just
Tuesday, 2 p.m.
Yeah, like, it's not going to happen. You have to,
Cyrus.
right? You have to turn
track.
it up that extra notch and have people hooting and hollering. And I mean, even if it's a little artificially created, like, you can get yourself fired up with some friends on a day where, you know, it's 1 rep max day and you've been waiting for that because you've been following percentages like you're supposed to and not trying to be sneaky about testing that out all mid cycle and things like that. You're actually waiting for that day, and it's a big important day for you because you're trying to PR. Like, you build that hype, you build that environment. That's one thing that helps. Another little trick that I've seen help a number of people is when you're lifting, lift with other people and make them load your bar for you and have them take you up
away,
incrementally. You walk away from the bar, they someone who knows you kind of knows what kind of jumps you would need to make to hit lifts. They can load your bar up with kind of random plates that you can't identify the weight immediately when you're going back, because once you start getting to that PR or that 5 pounds over PR, your mind tells you that you've maxed out and you'll stop really putting that effort in there. And if you don't know where you're at and you're just hitting snatches and focusing on the consistency, you could surprise yourself easily with a 10-pound PR, not even realizing what's on the bar. I've seen it happen a dozen times with people in the gym. You just trick your mind to thinking that it's something you've pulled before and you expect to pull it, so you do pull it. And that's just one trick I've seen work.
All right, got one last one, more of a
last one already?
Lighter question.
Oh,
yeah, fire through these. I mean, we can go further if you'd like. But from @RJ Clark, 3 weeks in and we've only carried the yoke once. What is up with that? Come on, tell them why. Why is it?
I don't even know. I don't know what's up with that. I mean, I've had people carry farmer's handles, sandbags, the yoke, like heavy barbell lunges. Like, I don't know. If you what's the big deal about a yoke?
What I would say is, I'm glad that you like the yoke, but that's not our sport. We're not strongmen. We're not going to be using yokes day in, day out.
You have to have some exposure to it,
exactly.
But like once every few weeks is plenty.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you have like a strongman event that you're planning for, or you know that that's coming up in like your competition, then yeah, you add it in. But for the general CrossFit population that's competing, like, getting some exposure and overloading your body and things like that, that's great, but I'm not trying to compress your spine every single day with a heavy yoke.
It could be a little bit of that. Like, we're not powerlifters. We're not trying to compress spines. We're not trying to mess up CNSs. We have other things we're more concerned with than just in the yoke.
Funny,
but
though.
Glad that you
What's
liked
up
it.
with that?
I just thought it was funny.
There's, like, we talked about this specifically in the Cycle 2 podcast. Like, we were trying to go for that versatility of the strongman type stuff. Like, get comfortable with these weird objects, like strength within that kind of that different plane. And then the reason why we're not doing half of the questions that came in is because they'll be answered in the Cycle 3 podcast, sort of in that same vein. So probably doesn't make sense to go back and watch the Cycle 2 podcast now.
No.
There's a week left. But for a lot of the I'd like a preview of Cycle 3 or what are we going to do moving forward or whatever, a lot of those things are going to be answered in the Cycle 3 podcast, which will be fairly soon following when this is released. So
yeah, mostly the questions we have in here are, Seth, why do you do this to us? Why is the workout so hard? Why did you do this to us?
Oh yeah, there was a question about long workouts. We can hit on that.
Yeah, okay, all right. Lidor 05. Why such long workouts, 20 to 30 minute time domains, and how long is a typical hatchet workout take?
Okay,
so there's a little bit
two
parts
topics
there.
and one question. So there wasn't a ton of long workouts. There was one day a week where there was a 20 to 30 minute intentional Metcon built in there, and that's just.
I think you said intentional because sometimes when it says for time, who knows if I'll be in there for 40 minutes.
That's true. I think they were all.
I did it on purpose.
I think, unless I'm making a mistake, that they were all AMRAPs on that day. So you're right. There could be like a 10 rounder in there that took you 40 minutes and like.
Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry about that. But there was intentionally one day a week of that built in as kind of part of a more pacing stuff. Like this year, I really kept bitch work separate from a lot of other movements up until you'll see some combinations in Cycle 3 and definitely in Cycle 4. But I just felt like no matter how much we talked about the differences on how to create like a plan of bitch work that works for you, monostructural training, people still weren't getting the pacing thing. And as we were starting to take our individual athletes further and further into pacing and finding the results, like that also translates over into Metcons, and people still aren't getting that either. They're going for huge sets of touch and go early on, huge sets of gymnastics, running like crazy, and while that works in certain aspects, that works in a much shorter time domain, and that's when
great training way to train most of the time, but not a great way to test things, or like you don't learn how to do that, distinguish the difference.
And I don't always want people to test in training either, but you also need to have the experience of what a pace feels like, and can you repeat rounds for 20 or 30 minutes at the same pace. Like things like that come up, and I talked a little bit about that stuff in some of the descriptions, but it's more stuff that people need to experience and get good at. And then there were longer pieces of bitch work intentionally, again, because just people don't want to pace the monostructural stuff, or they don't know how, or they're uncomfortable doing it. And if I can get that sort of drilled in earlier in the season, it's much easier for me to start combining stuff later in the season that will make you hit certain paces when you have 500 meter repeats in rounds of Metcons, or you have big sets of whatever, front squats, big sets of handstand push-ups, whatever. Like how you need to break them up to both train them and how you would use them in testing. They are different, but they will come together as a kind of, on purpose at the end. Yeah, everything will come together. So they were intentionally in there. It wasn't just like, oh, I was randomly putting them out there. One day a week, you guys had long workouts, and something along those lines will continue. It's just part of the game. So
and I'll dive into the hatchet question.
Oh, yeah.
So the second part of the question was, how long does a typical hatchet workout take? Essentially what you were looking for when you wrote the hatchet was originally was garage programming. We wanted to give this garage athlete a chance to do some of the programming. Maybe they didn't have equipment limitations, and as it kind of evolved, it became like, all right, it's more for the the affiliate class member who's like, I need a little bit more than this, but I look at the blog and I'm just like, I ain't snatching 225, I'm not doing 10 legless rope climbs. So in reality, a hatchet training session shouldn't take much more than 90 minutes, 2 hours. I mean, we're talking warm-ups and cools down.
I think 2 hours.
2 hours
is
is perfect.
Sweet spot,
yeah,
but
you get that rest that you actually need.
And to me, it's for someone who, again, really loves the style of training, likes using our programming, but understands that like I'm not a professional athlete. Maybe I'm not desiring to compete in the sport, but I just like the extra piece. So, a 90 minutes, 2 hours. We run one at our gym. Originally was 90 minutes, now it's 2 hours, so there's a little extra time to cool down and do some mobility, or maybe there's an accessory piece that you feel like you should hit that maybe the class isn't hitting, you have the opportunity to do that. So we're really looking for that 90 minute, 2 hour like time domain.
Right.
And again, it's if you're, whether or not like you should be doing hatchet or doing the blog, like try hatchet if you haven't yet, because it's a really good program, and we've seen really good success at our affiliate with people who want more than affiliate class, but again, the blog's not appropriate.
I'm just going to add to that real quick, because people complain sometimes about how long their training takes. People dilly-dally in the gym.
So much.
Like really bad. If you're efficient with your time and you're using a certain warm-up and you know what you need to do to go in there on top of your warm-up for your individual mobility, and you go right to your lift or right to warming up your Metcon or whatever, you can knock out that first chunk in a pretty short amount of time, then have a significant time to rest and reset up and kind of get ready for your next piece. And then if you still have that intensity and that energy left, get ready for your third piece. And that really can be done in 90 to 100 minutes, like a lot of the days. Some days you do need the full 2 hours. It's just the way that the pieces kind of come together. Sometimes you have a longer Metcon and a more challenging lift, and it's just the way it's going to work with trying to fit as much variance into 3 pieces a day. It's just unavoidable sometimes. But I just want to like mention that people fucking take their time in the gym. They
say that too, and I think that the hatchet program does a really good job of hitting all the necessary pieces, because a lot of people who I've talked to either through consults or through Instagram were like, I'm not gonna be able to get all I need with this program. And for 99% of people, I would say absolutely. Like, you're doing everything you need. You're hitting gymnastics, you're doing monostructural stuff, you're lifting weights, like you're hitting it all. And for a lot of you, it's probably gonna be the best program, because it's gonna allow you to actually recover and get the most from your training rather than just beating yourself into oblivion.
Honestly, like if you're looking at a measure of what a hatchet athlete versus a blog athlete looks like now that regionals is gone, because regionals was our old standard, it's if you're taking a shot to qualify for elite for a competition, that's the blog. If you're looking to maybe qualify for RX or intermediate, that's hatchet. And that's the majority of you guys out there, which is nothing wrong with that. We realize that the majority of you guys shouldn't be doing the massive volume and the high skill and the super heavy percentages that we put out there. That's why we've created hatchet for the masses. So more people should be playing with that, I think.
And there's definitely a strategy to like the order you execute it in. Like,
yes.
Like we find that it's one of those things where the time of it has so much to do with what order do you do this stuff in. Because if you go in there and you do your 25 cal bike sprints, your session just turned into 3 hours. If you did that first, you're going to be in deep trouble. You might not recover at all. So knowing that, like, that true, absolute empty the tank work that's going to be 2 or 3 times a week probably has got to go last. It has to go last. And you can, if you're the type that wants to get the Metcon in first and have that big chunk of time right in the middle to put your lift, that can work. The lift and the Metcon can work, but that variable, the like wild card of the kind of that nasty bitch work, do not put that in a place if it's the like crawl on the ground.
No, I agree with you, but I want to ask a question. I'm going to pick on one of our coaches specifically. So Hunter, recently in our hatchet class at our HQ, decided to experiment by putting bitch work first. And so how do you feel about that? Is there ever a good reason, or is there a reason to do something like that if you're trying to create something like, what would you do?
There is a reason for it, but it's not about the bitch work. It's about what is left. So if you're going into it and you're saying to yourself, I feel pretty sharp right now, I feel pretty fucking good, I'm not scared of this, I'm ready, and you want to put that bitch work in the middle because you know that maybe, like we've had some of those, they're not really Metcons, they're in that final column of like, we want you to, yes, you're going to jog 200 between rounds, but those legless rope climbs or this or that, that is the focus of the piece when you read the description. I think that can go last within a 90-minute to 2-hour situation. Like if you go in and you're like, this is my priority. I'm gonna get warmed up to do these bike sprints, and if I get these done at the level of intensity that I'm looking for, my day's pretty damn good. I've created some serious, I've modulated some tissues, I've screwed myself up pretty well. I can see that being there, like maybe it's in the back of your head knowing that it's the last thing you gotta do. But at the same time, if you are that hatchet athlete that's trying to qualify for those RX competitions, man, you're the people you're competing against are pretty damn good. And you probably can't get away with just doing bitch work and calling it a day. That's probably not, if you do that a couple of times a week, that's probably not going to be good enough.
I could see the scenario where occasionally, like something comes up and it's a time domain that's really bad for you or something like that, then you do that. But yeah, for the most part, I think occasionally that's okay, but that becomes your session where it's like sell your soul on bitch work and then who knows what happens
sometimes
after.
As a coach you can get too cute with trying to test things or figure things out when the answer's kind of right in front of you. Like, these people can't speak to you for 35 minutes, they only have an hour. What else can be else can be done? You kind of got to let them crawl out the door and into their car, as opposed to crawl over to the snatch bar.
It just changes the class. It ends up being like, all right, we did good bitch work, and now we're gonna do a little bit of easy skill work or mobility or something. But most part, people do leave. They just go, peace. Like, it would be like, I'm good. I've had enough now. That class is over. Did 3 bike sprints. I'm out.
I actually think because hatchet covers such a broad range of athletes, like it's the general catch-all, that you'll find the people that, like, if I did it and I did 25 calorie bike sprints times 6, like I'm not touching a barbell for 2 days. Like I'm so smoked, and I have nothing left to give after that. I'd have to rest. I don't know how long before I even play with some sort of upper body gymnastics. I'm on the low end of the spectrum on someone who could do hatchet versus someone like you who hatchet is actually real appropriate for these days. Like you could hit your bike sprints with full intensity, probably be somewhat recovered in 30 minutes and reasonably hit another piece after that.
Yeah, do like one thing after that, sure.
Yeah, we could take the same class and it's appropriate for you and not appropriate for me to do more. So like just understanding yourself as an athlete, or having, if you're a coach and you're using hatchet in your gym, like understanding that some people need to be done after that and some people just need a little break and should be continuing on, and that broad population, you got to know your client or know your athletes to really understand, you know, where they fit in that hatchet world. So
well, that's one of our most frequently asked questions about the regular blog is, should I split this stuff up? And it took us,
got a few of those in there.
It took us 4 or 5 years to convince the entire community that when you walk over to that bike, if you stay at 60% of your effort, you've literally just wasted your time.
Yeah,
you've wasted your time
for that little volume, for
exactly.
sure.
And it took us a long time because people didn't want to have that 22 seconds, 23 seconds, 24, 1 minute and 10 seconds. Like they didn't want that to happen, even though that's the sort of adaptation that we're after there. Once we convinced people of that, that made that 2-session thing, again, 2 or 3 times a week, pretty close to mandatory.
Yeah.
Like how many athletes do we coach at the high level that they completely separate that? It lives on its own. It's its own training session. I go in, I get warm, I do this, and this, and then I do my bike sprints or my row sprints or my skis. Or running can be, you get in that like 400 to 800 range, and what that does even to your upper body, like you pump out pretty bad.
I was gonna say, I have one athlete who I would allow them to do bitch work later in their session, but almost every other athlete I work with, it's like this time of year I want you to lift, and then I want you to work really hard in the bitch work. You know, some of the stuff they're doing is more geared to their weaknesses, so it's not something that's going to absolutely torch them, but it's going to be something that's going to challenge them. And I find that like they see the most adaptation there because they're fairly skilled at a lot of the other movements. So it's like, we need to build your engine. This is how we're going to do it, sort of thing.
We are generalizing a little bit about what bitch work is. There are bitch work pieces that do fit outside the realm of what we're talking about.
Oh yeah,
we're talking about the like, you'd rather have a stranger punch you in the face as hard as he can once than to get back on that bike or that rower or whatever. That's again, the 2 or 3 days a week, that kind of stuff. That's like, that lives in its own world.
True.
There's just no other way to make yourself feel that way.
No. Any other topics?
Guys,
pick one more.
One more.
Take 10 seconds.
We're only
to find
28 minutes in.
All right, let's see.
Is that too long or too short, Ted?
Too long.
Too long.
All right.
Sorry. Last one.
Last one.
If you're still here.
Yeah.
We want to go funny or want to go something a little more serious?
Your pick.
All right. Will there ever be a camp in the Southeast again? And I mean lower than the Mason-Dixon line, but not west of Mississippi. And I'm asking for a friend, and that's coming from Big Papa Flocka Flame.
There can be camps anywhere in the entire world. The logistics just have to work out.
Yep.
Yeah, we just need if you want to host a camp down there, I know someone who does, we just need to make sure that we have enough attendees to make it worth us traveling across the entire country, since we live in Maine. So anywhere we go is across the entire country. Just keep that in mind. So
but yeah, we'd like to go anywhere.
If we can make it work, we'll be there. If we can't, we won't. You'll come to us.
I mean, it sounds weird, but we don't get to choose.
Yeah,
no, we don't. We don't.
We tried a year of the like, let's pick the 4 corners and then one in the middle, and we didn't go to those like Misfit hubs. We didn't go to those places where
it's a bunch of you working out.
Exactly.
Down.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it sort of has to, we've learned after years and years of doing it right and doing it wrong and everything in between that we have to choose places that we know it's going to work out, because like, not from like a greed level, but from a financial standpoint, we have multiple athletes that we bring. We usually bring 3 to 5 coaches, admin, media, sometimes 2 media people. Like, we're not going to do like a half-ass camp. We're not going to do it.
No.
Like, and every once in a while, maybe if we go to a WaterPalooza or a competition, we can do a one-day seminar on weightlifting or gymnastics or whatever at a local spot. But outside of that, we can't just travel wherever we want.
I'm gonna say the best experience you can get for camp anyway moving forward is coming up. If you want the real camp experience these days, I think you got to start coming to us, and we're gonna probably do them twice a year or so. And you come up a couple days early and train at the gym, take a class, go out to dinner with us, like all kinds of shit like that. So if you want the real experience, like, we're gonna create more opportunities for you to come our way. We've probably done close to 50 camps around the world now, at least in the 40s for sure, and we've been to every corner of everywhere, and I think the best experience is going to lie with people doing that fitness vacation up in Maine with us. So that's what we're going to start pushing for.
All right.
I think that wraps it up. So that's it for this episode of Ask the Misfits. If you guys like this style of video, give us a like, and shoot a comment below if you want your question possibly featured in the next episode. Until next time, see you later.